is still awake to get to the final talks. So as Ara mentioned, one of the secret ingredients is data for any technical deployment, but now we really have the kind of secret agents coming here from Integrella. Welcome. So Phil and Shahriar, you are the secret agents of data or something like that. So straight from the UK.
Thank you. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I should start by saying Huva Iltabova from London.
Yes. Your wife has taught you well,
My
Shahriar.
wife has taught me, yes.
I have some secret knowledge. But hey,
right.
So let's deep dive into the data. Now I see your slides are up, so go ahead.
Excellent. So thank you very much for having us. It's a privilege. I'm looking forward to in sort of future events turning up in person. But it's again a privilege to be able to talk to you guys. So let me just do a couple of real quick introductions. So my name's Shahriar Haque. Most people call me Shaz if you ever meet me. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Integrella. And the reason I'm co-presenting with Phil is because Resource Solutions and Integrella, we're going on a journey together that's underpinned by API-led connectivity. So I'll let Phil say a couple of words.
Hi, I'm Phil Brown. I'm the Global Head of Analytics and Insights at Resource Solutions. For those of you who don't know, Resource Solutions is a global provider of recruitment and talent solutions. And my role there, effectively, I look after 3 teams that support the business and our clients through analytics and insights.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. So what are we going to talk about today? So as I said, this is unashamedly a talk that is a story. It's about the journey that Resource Solutions is going on with Integrella and how we're able to help them improve the way that they share data. And of course, there's a background to that, and then there's a natural progression of the dialogue. So we've done the introductions. I'm going to hand over to Phil now, who's going to give you the background and tell you a little bit about the industry and the business that Resource Solutions is in. What does the vision look like? And then I'll talk a little bit about the journey and how we're enabling that. So over to you, Phil.
Great. Thanks, Shaz. The internet today is full of articles about skills, talent, and the workforce. Phrases such as the war for talent, topics around skills shortages, retraining, reskilling. Right now, any time in the last few years, you'll find a wealth of commentary online about this and what it means for the future of talent and recruitment and businesses' access to them. Things like hybrid ways of working coming out of the pandemic, that's a massive topic at the moment. The impact of jobs from the coming fourth industrial revolution. The very real and global skills gap that we have at the moment and the challenges that brings in pretty much every sector and every industry. And then retraining for these future industries and the new technologies that have come out very quickly over the last couple of years and are continuing to be developed going forward. So there's a lot of talk about the future, but contrary to this dialogue and perhaps somewhat bizarrely, recruitment remains a largely retroactive endeavor. Yep, the objective of recruitment is broadly to hire an individual to employment at a future date, but typically that's the only forward-looking objective. In reality, a recruitment process starts because certain events have happened. So, scenario might be a vacancy has arisen because an individual has left an organization that's left a gap that now needs to be filled. A client can win a piece of new business, which means they need to expand. So they need more people. So again, the recruitment piece is a reaction to something that has happened. So certainly some elements are forward-looking in principle. Hiring to fulfill a new piece of work or for a new customer that's set to be implemented in the future. But even here, these requirements are based upon events that have occurred. A new piece of work has been won, new implementation has been scheduled. So recruitment is always playing catch up. Even in workforce planning, which is decidedly or should be a future-orientated activity, it's compiled based upon an extrapolation of historical data that's applied to current or impending events. And largely because of this, it's notoriously inaccurate, to the point which quite a lot of organizations don't bother with it so much these days. So in this way, recruitment is almost always reactive. It's time pressured, and it's done with a clock ticking because it's always playing catch up. So at Resource Solutions, we're looking to change this fundamentally. We want to make recruitment more preemptive, more predictive. We want to be able to scan the horizon of probabilities and determine the shape and structure of our activities better. And we've been trying to do this. So our attempts so far have had varying degrees of success. We've developed predictive analytics for resource planning. We've introduced Pareto and Price's laws to workforce planning and workforce analysis. And our market intelligence and business intelligence teams have developed highly effective data analytics and visualization tools for us internally and externally, for ourselves and for our clients. But we must take it further. We want to be able to partner with businesses to help them define and plan their talent profiles and requirements, and enable them to meet and fill them ahead of the curve, more effectively, more effortlessly, and more cost effectively. We want to be able to move that dial from reactive to proactive. This is our big, audacious goal, and achieving this would be revolutionary for us and for our industry. Operationally, it will allow us to ensure we have the right resource in the right place at the right time. It'll give our candidates a much better recruitment experience. It'll give clients quick and cost-effective routes to hire the talent they need at the time that they need it. And it will give us, Resource Solutions, a more efficient, cost-effective recruitment process to be able to give to our clients. So to achieve this, we require 3 key elements as I see it. The first one is a shift in mindset and behaviors. The second is a technology to support the collection and collation of data and the development of that technology and its sophistication. And the third one is the creation of the appropriate algorithms and probabilistic analysis methodologies to enable us to do the horizon scanning, to do the planning, and to put all that stuff in place and actually make it work. So these 3 elements, and particularly the first 2, are intricately linked. The third is the application of well-known, but actually rarely applied in our industry at least, mathematical theorems and processes and analysis. To enable our organization to begin to deliver our services in this way, it crucially requires our teams to think differently. But to do that requires the physical uncoupling from rudimentary standard service delivery, producing manual reports, crunching data in Excel spreadsheets, uploading, compiling, validating data sets, and all the rest of it. In reality, for us, this is an industry built on the mutual incompatibility of data sources, which results from servicing multiple clients, multiple geographies, with multiple systems and strategies. It's here that integrated technology and data is the enabler. It allows us to use data in new ways, improve its quality, transforming it into a commodity and a resource that has considerable value and utility to us. Once we have these functional elements in place, we can begin to truly change the mindsets of our data teams and then those of our operational teams in the wider business to spend more effort and more focus looking forward. This allows us to think and talk differently about the future through data and new concepts, which in a non-deterministic system allows us to affect it and manifestly shape it as we want to. So the application of this approach will be able to unlock and visualize and utilize the value in our collectivized data, automate the data set production, bringing cumulative time and cost savings to what we do, build accurate and real data sets that enable more analysis and better analysis, as well as allowing the probabilistic and predictive analysis that we want to do on top. Free our teams from mundane activities, get them doing exciting stuff, looking forward with the data and looking forward with analytics. Will allow us the space to create analyst recruiters, bringing analytics to prominence alongside the relationship skills and the interactive skills that they've already got in place. And then fundamentally changing your organization's relationship to and of the utilization of the data that they have at their fingertips. and to use it in planning, but also in their day-to-day operational activities. So the benefits of the journey are cumulative and they grow over time, but they all start with that first step, which is that integration process. Can we meet this goal? I believe we can. Time will tell, but I think, like all good explorations of new territories, what you gain from the journey itself can be as, if not more, rewarding than the destination that you arrive at.
Thanks, Phil. So I'm picturing or imagining the people watching this are thinking, when is the word API going to be used? It is coming. But I want to just kind of, I guess, now take you, the listener, and the watcher on the journey that we're going on. So this is the way that I described what resource solutions are trying to do. They're trying to go from the kind of situation on the left to the kind of situation on the right. And as we all know, that situation didn't just happen overnight. It didn't take place over a short time frame, and there was a lot of challenges along the way. So the way that it actually played out is this. And for those of you like me that are perhaps a little bit longer in the tooth will recognize some of these devices and probably even own some of these devices. I certainly had my first phone was the one that was third on the left, actually, back in the late 90s. But this is how we expect the journey to take place, and it's something that we're quite kind of passionate about in respect of our clients. We take them on a journey. So how have we presented that? How are we doing that for Resource Solutions? Well, we're doing it over a number of stages, and through stepping through these stages over a period of time, we will improve the way that Resource Solutions is able to share data internally and externally. And there we go, there's the key words, through the use of APIs. So the fundamental building block of everything that we are doing for Resource Solutions and with Resource Solutions is driven by an API-led approach to sharing data. So how are we doing that? So initially, we're looking at the data that is of most value to the business. And as a true consultant that I am, we've developed some models to allow Resource Solutions to be able to say, in the way that business process executes and data moves throughout the enterprise internally and externally, which bits of data are of most value to Resource Solutions as an enterprise. And that's something that you would look at and then determine, well, which bits of strategic and tactical change are touching those processes. And it starts to give you a sense of, well, where might my focus be initially? The key one for us is the decision making of, am I going to do a proof of concept? Am I going to do a pilot? Am I going to do an MVP? And we all know what the differences are between those three. Resource Solutions are doing an MVP, and actually we've just almost concluded that piece of work, which I'll come on to shortly. There's a concept of the Pioneer project. At some point in time, Resource Solutions will have to stop sharing data the old way and start sharing data in the new way. And you can either do that through starting a brand new bit of work, or you can intercept a project. Whatever your kind of choice, that's your Pioneer, and that's where you're going to prove the art of the possible. I heard the word curate in an earlier presentation. That was very pleasing to hear. APIs are like pieces of art. You collect them, you curate them, your collection changes over time. They have a life cycle, etc. And you start to think about the technologies that you're interested in, because obviously there's a plethora. Stage two is to then start to transition into actually doing some things. So we talk about actually executing some sort of initial piece of work. That's what we're doing for RS at the moment. You're going to look to see, well, what does that mean for my change roadmap? Something that we're very passionate about and we believe is a highly complementary area of thought is enterprise data. And so we usually talk to our clients with both of those hats on, enterprise data as well as sharing data well. And that's something that we're also working with RS on. And we start to talk about, well, partners external to RS. RS is in the business of providing recruitment services to enterprises. And so we'll start to look at those organizations. And there was an interesting point made earlier about, well, what's their business model? What's RS's business model? If the API is the interface between the two, how do you make sure that the API is really providing the right service to its consumers? So that's very interesting. And of course, we've heard some talks about security. Stage 3 is, again, really to evolve from that, but the big one really is to start thinking about, how do I industrialize this process? How do I industrialize an engine within my enterprise that is going to be continually churning out artifacts that I can use to share data? And the sort of stage 3 and stage 4, typically enterprises exhibit those sorts of things are exhibited by enterprises that are quite mature in this space. And I would say that when we presented this view initially to RS as a strategy to move forward, we intentionally didn't put a time frame on each one of those things. And I would say we're somewhere between stage 2 and 3 with RS. We've just about completed implementation of an MVP platform, which I'm going to come on to shortly. And we're now starting to talk to them about, okay, well, you've got some technology, you know how to deploy APIs, how to secure them, how to make sure you monitor and manage them, but what do you do now? And that's really when you start to have this conversation, which we've heard today and yesterday around, well, what's the value of what I'm doing? So what are the, in the style of sort of Steve Jobs, I've tried to keep the amount of text down to a minimum. And these are the things really that underpin the approach that we're following with RS. So again, you probably all have heard this phrase, eat the elephants. When you first start down this road, if you are the kind of enterprise that is, as many of the enterprises are that I come across when we first talk to them, mired within a spaghetti junction of point-to-point interfaces where text files or Excels or CSVs are FTP'd around the business internally and externally, or managed by jobs that nobody really knows how they work, this seems like a frightening place. When you talk about system, process, and experience APIs, and you talk about the network, you talk about microservices, clients are frightened by that. And so we have to try to take them on a journey and explain to them, how do you go about this in a way that kind of reduces that fear? The key one that we've always come up against is with our clients working with RS, and Robert Walters Group is the parent company of RS. That's why it says RWG rather than RS. But we work with their resources, not to them, and that really helps to take them along the journey. Business cases is something that I'm particularly passionate about, and I've had a lot of experience in previous companies. And it's an important thing. You've got to be able to answer the question, well, what's the value of what I'm doing? What's the cost-benefit equation of this approach to sharing data that you're putting in, and how can we measure it? It's super important. I talked about enterprise data. We try to present, and we're working with RS to ensure that of all the providers and consumers of data within the RS and RW family, that we try to design and build an approach and the underlying technology that has enterprise data and the governance of enterprise data as a foundation for what goes on within that estate at a very tangible level. We talked about working with clients rather than doing something to a client, and this also applies very nicely to the latter parts of when you are landing change, as well as the early parts when you're just talking to them about the technologies. And this is a really key one, especially when you're trying to address the point of, my God, isn't this frightening what you're suggesting here? It's just too outlandish. You've got to get buy-in from the top down, and unfortunately, that's something that we, I think we've had a reasonable success in. People like Phil, who are senior people within the clients. It's important to get them to buy in, and then the message can roll down. So I talked a little bit about business cases. I've had experiences where I've wanted to secure funding to do some work with a client, and they just didn't believe the benefits realization model. And it was, it allowed them to be very black and white in terms of what will I invest in, what will I not invest in. And so earlier when we heard a message earlier around value and long-term return versus short-term return, ultimately this just comes down to what are the pounds, or in this case, euros, dollars, etc. each one of those stages allow you to take the learnings from that stage and not only apply that from a change delivery efficiency, from a technology usage, but what's my understanding now of the cost benefit equation? Is it more or less beneficial than I previously thought? And at every stage, we look to try to deliver quick wins as soon as possible. So our clients particularly like, okay, well, when am I going to see something that I can actually use? I don't want to have to wait 2 years before I get some value out of this investment, given it's so frightening and so new. So I sort of got a bit nervous about showing this slide, but this is a slide from some of the design documentation of what we're doing for RS. And the reason I wanted to put it up here is because I know we've got a hugely technical audience, even more technical than I, but I wanted to just put this slide up to really hammer the message home that this stuff is complicated. And in order to achieve all the principles of sound API management that we're all familiar with, but you want to do it at a price point that a client can dip their toe in the water and understand what good looks like, this is what you end up with. So you've got a bunch of providers on the right-hand side. These are sort of recruitment platform as a service providers. And then we've heard the earlier talk about the complexities of Kubernetes when you implement a service mesh. I would certainly kind of understand that point. And of course, because Robert Waters is aligned with AWS and Apigee, we're using elements of their stack. And so we're bringing together all these different technical building blocks across AWS, across Kubernetes, across elements to adopt sound CI/CD and DevOps processes, as well as core elements within AWS. And all of that is allowing us to show RS and Robert Waters what good looks like and how you can achieve something quite groundbreaking for almost for very little money. And then my very last slide, again, you'd probably be wondering, well, what have you actually done for the MVP? And again, this isn't meant to, I'm not going to drain this, but it's really just meant to show you that even for an MVP, it can be relatively complicated. And so what we have here is we have a number of service systems of record at the bottom: Beeline, Merit, Dynamics 365, Apidays, AFAS, Snowflake. And these are all types of systems that are part of the many systems that RS uses day to day. And what we did during the MVP is to prove the art of the possible. Using this technology, how do you design and build a highly granular set of APIs within the 3 layers, so you're adopting best practice, that showcases what is possible by surfacing data from these applications to address real business problems. So as an example, Beeline is a external platform as a service provider that is prevalent in the recruitment industry. We wanted to showcase how you could integrate with that using this type of structure. So I'm happy to take questions on this another time, because I'm conscious we're probably running out of time. But that was my last slide. Happy to take any questions. I think by my stopwatch, we've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, well, first things first, I am going to name that slide Shahriar's scary slide, and I am going to tell you what I did with engineers' slides in one previous place where they showed me those kind of slides, and they were going to show them to customers, and I taught a machine learning algorithm to tell them always that this is a too ugly slide to show to the customers.
Yeah, I didn't create that slide. Thankfully, so our CTO created that. But yeah, the message was that it's complicated.
No, but that's true. That's true, and that is actually to Phil's point that you were talking about that reskilling and all those complexities and competencies, and I think that we are actually at the moment training a lot of integration specialists for lots of different companies, and yes, well, let's put it this way: there is a skill gap, but it's not necessarily always where you would think it is. is like starting from how do I make an Excel sheet to a CSV so that I can use it in an integration, and then we come to the API side of things. So yeah. But seriously, if somebody has in the audience any questions, there's now the time. But what do you think is kind of like, if we are looking into these complex diagrams, and I see there a lot of multi-cloud and multi-vendor stacks and all of those lines going to places. So how do you actually monitor that? Like, how do you know that the integrations are even working in all of that mess there?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of, I suppose, adopt the same level of comfort with complexity by using monitoring tools that allow that. So we use tools like Istio, we use Kiali, we use elements of AWS for monitoring. One thing I'll say is that what you saw there is what we call we as a term that we use to go to clients with, we call it the digital innovation platform. It used to be integration, but integration is a bad word now, isn't it? So digital innovation platform.
Yeah.
And it works because of the architecture being highly containerized. It works equally well in Azure or GCP. And so when we go to a client, we deploy it in Azure, we use the appropriate services and apps from Azure rather than, to replicate, the capability that we would have used a specific AWS service for. So the point is it's not a platform or a product in the true sense. It's a tool bag. And our point of view is that kind of 20% of the problem is the tech and 80% of the problem is value. It's what do I do when, in what order, the resourcing, how does this scale, or how do I work with my partners, etc., etc.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and when we're, for example, training those integration specialists, it's like 80% seems to go to the making requirements and even understanding why would you be integrating something to something else. So as we were hearing from the API product side of things, so it is equally important to understand what's the value prop of that integration or that data that you're wanting to have. And sometimes you don't even have that data that you want to get.
So, I mean, I made a note that I'm going to have a look at the Canvas approach now that we're starting to talk more about value with RS. We'll be using that.
That's great.